see so many of you commenting. So I'd love to hear everything you have to say during the session. So feel free to add comments in there. Sarah is on our team at UserActive. So she'll be monitoring the chat, responding to any questions, and I'll try to make as much time as I can to answer questions and discuss with you guys issues that you're having on the day. That's the goal of the session. This is pretty much like a webinar or a live session, but I want to keep it as interactive as we can, so that we get to talk about issues. Okay, so I'm just letting a few more people call. I'm going to mute if you can mute yourself if you have background noise, and anyone who isn't able to do that, I can do it for you. Great. Oh, we've still got people joining. I have to let them all in, you see. So, but let's get started. We've got 37 people on the call. Let's get started. I think that's one of our biggest ever so far. Okay, so that's great. Great start. Okay, so maximizing SaaS revenue with existing customers. What a cool topic. So we've done our welcome already, but just to give you a little bit more information about us, we're product experts. We design SaaS products all day, every day. We have a team of 7 people. We're 4 designers, a couple of design managers, and Sarah on our team who does marketing, and she's also in touch with our accounts and helping our customers too with issues that we have. So it's great to have her with us. We basically design software products from the ground up. So for new products, we develop color schemes, UI interfaces, do the UX, and then create a design system and design out the whole product. We hand off to developers who then build what we design. So that's what we do. And I always offer time on a call if anybody needs help on the topics that we discuss in today's session, or if you need help in general with product design for your SaaS, we're here to help. So just feel free to go to useractive.io to book a call. You can always book a call there. So let's jump in. So what are we going to look at? We're going to look at today, a lot of you who have a software product make a lot of effort designing, building that product. It's expensive building software. And it's also difficult to acquire customers, to get the right kind of customer to take your SaaS company from a kind of startup or bootstrap mode through to funding, or actually getting to break even and profitable. That's a real big challenge. So all of that work and effort you put into winning customers, we want to make sure that you're delivering the best you can for them, but also getting the best value from them, so that you're not leaving any money on the table, as they say. So we're going to take a look at the ways you can do that, and then we're going to take a look at jumping into where you can do this within your product. Okay, so how can you use your product to do the work on acquiring more revenue from your existing customers? So a lot of times we refer to this as expansion. Expansion revenue. So that's expanding existing accounts, and there's a number of ways you can do that, but there are challenges associated with that. So first of all, one of the common things that happens is that you've got all of these customers, it's taken you a while to get these users, and there are opportunities to sell them more or deliver more value to them, and we're missing those opportunities, either because the product isn't ready, or because we're not yet able to release some features that they need, or some services that they need, or we're too busy. That happens frequently. We're too busy, and we're always chasing new customers that we miss opportunities to expand on the existing ones. And you might also find that some accounts are not growing. So you might find that it doesn't seem that there's a need from your customer side to use the product more. They're not inviting more users. They're not upgrading. They're not taking the actions that would indicate that they're getting value and growing with your software. And then another issue that people come up against quite a bit when I talk to them in this area, specifically relating to the product, is you're not sure what to promote or how to promote it, or when in the customer journey. So we're going to take a look at moments within the product where we can make an offer, and we can do it at the right time, and it's something that your customer values and that they need. Okay, so I want to jump into just looking at these 6 methods of that you can use to maximize revenue. Okay, so first off is increasing your pricing. This is a really, really common thing that I see with a lot of SaaS companies, is that they spend way too long to increase their price. They spend a fortune on building the product, designing the product, advertising, promoting it, getting customers, hiring a team. As you're doing all of this, you're building more value in what you're offering. And as you build more value, it makes sense that the price can go up. So the key thing is to not to forget to review pricing. And a guideline here is to review pricing every 6 to 8 weeks. Let me see who's got a background noise. If you've got some background noise, we can put you on mute. Yeah, if you haven't put your microphone on mute, you should do that, unless you want to speak out or you want to say something or ask questions. Okay, so that's a really common thing. You should really be increasing pricing around every 18 months. And it doesn't have to be an overhaul of the whole pricing. It could just be one minor thing that you notice where you're giving away more value than you're getting. The other one is increasing the upgrades. How many people upgrade their plan from free trial to your startup plan, or from startup to a growth plan, something like that. The key thing here is the conversion metric for the upgrade. Now, there's a lot you can do in your product to promote upgrades. The better the experience, the more value the user gets, the more likely they are to upgrade, but you also want to provide a flow to encourage them to do that. The next thing you can do is offer more usage of your product. That could be more features. It could be more storage for services like Drive or Dropbox. It could be more contacts if it's a CRM. It could be more credits. One thing that we've been using lately is called Happy Scribe, and it does transcriptions of video, and we have to pay for credits to use that. So that's another way that you can charge for usage. Adding seats is a key thing. That's a classic account expansion play, is encouraging collaboration on teams. So for something like a project management software, it's very typical that you're going to have whole teams inviting other team members on, and they need their whole teams to be on there to collaborate on what they're doing. But it's not just project management that benefits from this. There's pretty much every category of SaaS can benefit from adding seats. Then there's add-ons. So you don't always have to just think in the typical 3 tiers for subscription model. You might be developing something or have ideas for something to release into your product that doesn't necessarily fit neatly into one of your pricing tiers, but it could be a value add. It could be an add-on. I've seen SaaS companies charging for access to the mobile app, charging for things like a CRM where you can use a voice and you can use an actual cell phone number. So one thing that they started to charge for that became really successful was to have a mobile number that you can use, and they can start sending SMS so that their users could pay for bundles for a number of messages and for different phone numbers. So if you think a little creatively, and I'm sure you all have quite a few ideas already, there's probably add-ons that you can already provide and release into your product. And then finally is services. This gets overlooked quite a lot in SaaS because in SaaS, everything's around subscription revenue, and we tend to get quite focused on recurring revenue. Actually, in SaaS, more than 30% of revenue globally in SaaS is actually services. And that could be concierge onboarding, consulting that supports your customer with goals that they're trying to achieve related to your product. Also getting them set up, helping them with onboarding, training, and customer support. So there's tons you can do with services to bolster your revenue, and most of that will relate to existing customers. So before we move on, I would love to hear from you. Do you guys have any challenges with or questions around where you can start getting existing revenue from customers? I'd love to jump into that with you, answer a few questions, and see if there are any of these 6 areas that we can help you to focus on inside your product. Let me just go into the chat here. Okay, so John, thanks for your question, John. John has asked, on increasing pricing, should you offer the ability for users to pay for 1 year in advance before and give everyone a hard date? John, is that about renewing an annual plan, or are you referring to when you increase the price?
When to increase the price and giving users an opportunity to say, hey, you can lock this in for an entire year, but if you're on the monthly plan, it's going to go up by this date.
Right. Yeah. That's a great way to approach it. There was a practice that was done quite a lot called grandfathering. Are you familiar with that concept? Yeah, where the original customers were who they subscribed to a cheaper plan, and as the pricing goes up, you keep them on the old plan and they pay the old pricing. It's recommended not to do that in SaaS, because they're the longest, most loyal customers, and they're getting more and more value as your product improves, but you're not, the balance goes so much in their favor that you're not really receiving the value in return. Also, their needs become different to new customers that you're onboarding, because new customers are paying a different price point, the value is different, and you tend to have to service two different groups. So this is a really nice way of resolving that grandfathering issue. It's okay, would you like to lock in your current price? If so, you can have it for 1 more year. After that, when it renews, you go up to the increased pricing. Otherwise, yeah, we have this hard date for monthly price increases that will go up in June, and this will be the new price. That's a really good way to approach it. And sometimes people ask about how do you communicate the price increase, and I found that the best way to do it is to present improvements that you've made where you're delivering more value. So your product has improved, highlight the new features, say, hey, we've been launching all of these new features into the product. We've also updated the UI, things like that you're doing on a regular basis. And then following that can come a message. It could be a sequence thing. It could be, you roll out a message where you come to pricing, and then pricing can be pitched in a way that it's offset based on the extra value that's been developed, right? So then it's much more palatable for your customers. They can see why there's a logical reason why the price is up, increasing, and they're getting more value. That's a really good point, John. Thanks for sharing that one. Okay, we have a couple more questions that I'm just going to dive into here. So Kailash, I think it's Kailash. Does it make sense these days to have a price escalation clause in the SaaS subscription agreement? I'm not too, this is not my area of expertise, because that's kind of the contractual side of things. Could you elaborate on a little more on that? Have you seen that before? Or if anyone has experience, some people on these workshops have more experience than I do in certain areas. So if you have, I would love to hear it on that.
So Peter, actually, my question continues. So
yeah.
We think of price escalation as a friction to sell while selling, and hence we avoid it in the contract and keep the price constant. Now, you made a good point that if the pricing increase in the future, it should also apply to all the older contracts as well, because you want to keep the pricing the same for all your cohort. So that's something I have not seen successfully implementing. So I think that's pretty tough to do, especially in a B2B SaaS business. B2C, I understand. I think it's pretty standard. In B2B, I don't see that. I mean, there is a lot of friction to do that.
Yeah, I have a good story on this. Are you familiar with Typeform, Kailash?
Yes.
Yeah. So Typeform, we're based in Barcelona. Typeform are one of the leading SaaS companies here. And when they first started out, they obviously, like many new SaaS companies, they're really looking for product market fit, and they're trying to build the best product that they can to resonate with customers. And they had this focus for such a long time that they ended up, doing really well. They had a really big customer base. They were doing quite well in MRR. I think it was something like 2 million at this point. And sorry, ARR, I'm talking ARR. And they realized that they hadn't increased their pricing in such a long time. So they decided to double the pricing to catch up to where they thought they should be. And they developed a rationale around this. They thought, okay, if we increase our pricing by double, the worst thing that they projected was that they lose half of their customers, and it would leave them the same revenue. And it would mean that it would be easier because they'd actually be servicing half of the amount of customers. So things like customer support requests, things like this there'd be less of them. And what actually happened is they doubled pricing and none of their customers cancelled. So just overnight, they doubled revenue. And from that stage on, they were continually making sure to be on this cycle of reviewing pricing and increasing it incrementally. So that's a really good standout example of how it can work. I'm not too familiar with the contractual side of things, but I'm sure there's someone else. It's just that I don't want to speak on something that I'm not really experienced in. Okay, so I'm going to just dip into a couple more questions here. How would you frame this for usage?
Sorry, shall I, Peter? I'll just jump in if nobody else is doing on the contract.
Oh yeah, please do. I think you're probably a good contact on this point.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you can write whatever contract you like, but the good question that was raised was, will the customers accept it? And I think that's the dilemma is, you've got to write it. I mean, in B2C or very cheap products, customers won't read the terms and conditions, so you can put in whatever you like, and they probably won't read it, they'll just accept it. But if you're selling to any reasonable sized customer, they definitely will look at terms and conditions. So the question is not what should you put in your terms and conditions, but what will your customers accept? And I think it's always, a balance that makes it fair. So, if there is inflation, I think it is fair to increase the prices. So the things that I've seen successfully deployed are a strict clause that says you can increase it with inflation and set the inflation rates, as UK, whatever index, or US whatever index, or whatever, so that there's a baked in inflation which is really hard to argue with. You could go for index inflation plus or minus 5%, so you've got a bit of leeway on that. But what you're doing there by capping it either at inflation or something is you're saying we haven't put this clause in just so we can screw you arbitrarily. We put this clause in so that it's fair to everybody, and we've been upfront about it. And I think that's generally accepted. The other option is to just give notice. And the way I've always looked at this is, for instance, if I'm going to give you, let's say if I've got an annually recurring contract, if I require you to give me 60 days notice to cancel, then I have to give you 90 days notice to change the terms. And that's what we've got. So we commit to the price increase will only be from your annual renewal. And we will always give you 90 days notice of any price change. And you've got a 60-day notice period. So what we're saying to customers there is we can't stitch you arbitrarily. Like if we give you a price increase, you will then that will give you an option to cancel. And I think, whichever way you go about it, if you've created something that your customers are not going to, you're going to look at and go, that's fair, then you've overcome that sales objection that would be there if you just simply said we can change our prices anytime we like, and fuck you. Sorry, Peter, if you've recorded this, you'll have to put a bleep in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. Thanks for the answer. That's really helpful. And we also had a comment from Alison in the chat. She says a lot of SaaS companies that she's worked with have had disclosure in the contract that the company reserves the right to increase pricing at any time, and typically in ELAs?
Yes, very similar to Andrew's comment around giving ample time to notify the customer, and still having that customer be able to opt out, only doing that upon renewal. Sometimes contracts also had an auto renew clause in there, but really enterprise type of companies would request a red line and then request a cap on price increases year over year to only see an increase in 5 or 10%, for example, or something like that. And I think that that's just cause to terminate the agreement if it doesn't meet that parameter. But I love the type form example. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Alison. Great. Okay, there's a couple more here before we move on. What are your thoughts on BNPL, aka Klarna, for SaaS to sell more annual subscriptions and maximize revenue? And I have to admit, I don't know what BNPL is. Does anybody? Could you?
I think it's buy now, pay later.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I haven't got experience with that either, unless somebody else has to share on that topic. There's another point about partnering with a charity to promote sharing a percentage of revenue when increasing SaaS pricing with a charity. I don't know, maybe there's some goodwill in there, and maybe brands that value or have some CSR practice for that would be really, really great. My gut feeling is that it probably won't influence their reaction to the price increase too much, but I think it's a really nice practice. Letting your customers sign up for okay, so BNPL is letting your SaaS companies sign up annual but pay monthly, while vendors get paid up front. Yeah, interesting. Minus commission. Yeah, see, we're like product experts. We do all the work on the product side. So some of these kind of practices, I'm not too clued up on. Just to mention that the browser extension is one of the add-ons that can be added to your SaaS offering. Yeah, that's a really great point. I remember we worked with a CRM that had a Chrome extension. And the Chrome extension was based around having some of the core functionality from the CRM that you could use just when you're in the browser. There was a paid monthly fee for the Chrome extension, and there were also promotions in that to upgrade or to buy additional usage and credits in the Chrome extension. So that's quite a nice way to offer an add-on. Okay, let's move on. What I'm going to do on the rest of this session is share some examples of where in the product and how in the product you can promote interactions that can drive increased revenue for your customers. So let's jump through that. I'm going to go pretty quickly because I don't want to take up too much time on this. And I prefer to have these discussions because I think they address topics that you're all dealing with. So this is a worksheet that I've created to help think about where you can expand your accounts and how. We'll share this with everybody after the workshop, so you have access to this. But what we do is we think about your acquisition model. We think about where's the core value in your product. What are the offers that you can provide, and what's the best time? When is the best moment to present those offers to users during their life cycle? In order to get that offer correct, we think about who is the user profile. Usually you don't just have one, right? You have something like 5 or 6 often user profiles in your SaaS. What plans they're on, because obviously your offers are usually contextual. So to who is the user profile and what plan are they on and where are they in the life cycle? So it's very contextual and personalized how you present these offers. And then, are there areas to promote collaboration in your product actively? And when is the moment that the expansion revenue occurs? So I'm just going to run through this with a couple of examples and see how we'd think about some of these. So value features, what are the most valued features in your product? If you had to strip out all of your features except one, what would you keep? And what would your customers be most likely to pay for? So I'm going to use the example of this a live web summit software. So let's say their acquisition model is free trial. They've got a product-led kind of model. Now, some of their core features are hosting a live stream to present a web summit, right? A live web summit. So you might think about that you might have 3 to 5 core features, and if you list them down here, you'll start to be able to work with those and think how you can promote them more. One example that we worked with here is a CRM. This is a really cool example because they had such a niche focus. So they catered to churches in the US. So Text in Church managed to build a really solid company with a good revenue base just by providing a CRM to help churches communicate to all of their audiences, which was a challenge they had because they're not too technical and tech savvy, and just having a CRM really focused to their needs really helped them over. So one of the things that Text in Church used here was the dashboard to promote key features. So you'll see here there's this Talk in Church widget on the left hand side. This is a promotional call to action to try out the Talk in Church feature. So what they're doing here is in the free trial, they're using their most valuable features to promote them and encourage users to try them right on the dashboard. This is the key thing that they did in a lot of areas. And then one thing that we also like to make really easy to access and very apparent is show the plans, show the pricing, make a really compelling pricing screen within your product. Very, very often we see simplified pricing screens. They're not very contextual. They don't tell the user what plan they're in. They don't explain the usage or how many seats. And they might just show 3 tiers and that's it. And many times I've seen the pricing plan, the pricing page, there's a link in the product and it links back out to the website. So you're actually encouraging users to leave the product and go to the website, which I think is quite a negative flow. And another good example is having paywalls or free trial expiry notifications. So these kind of product interactions that you can put into your product to create the moment where the moment for the upgrade. So there's a couple of ways to think about this. One is presenting the features or presenting the value, and the next one is creating a moment where they have to decide. So it's you can think of it as a journey. And that brings us into upgrade offers. So how can you leverage your features to promote the upgrade, and how can you segment value? So if you have a feature that has a lot of value, there are ways to split that value up so that you're not giving everything away. So for something like a hosted live stream, for this example that we'll be using for the live web summits, one of the things that you could do is charge for having multiple streams. So if you're doing a big web summit, you might be streaming different speakers at the same time. So then your streaming feature, which might be on a paid plan, may have a premium level or an additional cost to stream multiple streams. Now, I've given more examples here. For each feature, I'm giving an example of how you would provide an upgrade offer for that feature. But it's just an exercise, a creative exercise in seeing how you can stack that value and offset it to pricing that relates. The more value that they get, the more that they're charged for that value. Now, there's quite a few different product examples that I'm showing here, and some of them relate to the different types of revenue expansion that we talked about earlier. So one of these is, how do you increase the amount of users or the amount of usage that you're getting? So this is a product that we designed called First Promoter. They help SaaS platforms find affiliate affiliates and affiliate revenue. One of the things that we thought about charging additional cost for is the number of promoters or affiliates that the users have in their platform. So while you have this promoter screen, you can see a clear list of who all of the promoters are, and you can manage your promoters, but you can also add new promoters. And it's a great opportunity for features like this. One is that there's collaboration, because every type of user profile is an additional collaborator, which spreads more awareness of your product. But the other thing here is that you can obviously, create tiers of costs for a certain number of promoters. So you could say on a basic plan or on a free plan, you get 5 promoters, but after that, then we're able to present a paywall to upgrade in order to use more promoters or have more promoters on your platform. It's the same with, this is the example of virtual summit software that I've been using. And as this is a screen that shows when their users build out a web summit, there's a point at which they have to invite speakers. And this is another key area where you can think about, increasing the pricing for adding additional speakers. So, maybe you cap it at 10, and then they have to add more, and they have to pay more to add more than 10, and you can segment it that way. This screen is a pricing screen for a driving theory test software. So students who are learning to drive use this to learn and to practice their tests. But the actual customer is the driving school. So the driving school is the user that pays for this platform. And when they add new students, they have a certain allocation. So they might be able to add 20 students on their first plan, then they have to upgrade and pay for a new bundle of students. And one of the interesting things about this platform is that the pricing, you can get really creative with pricing. So rather than just upgrading the plan to access more students, you could stay on one plan and add as many students as you want. The more students you add, the cheaper it gets to add students. So if you added 10 students, they might cost €2 or $2 each. If you add 50, they become slightly cheaper per user because of the economy of scale. So those are some examples of the kind of interactions that we put into a product. They don't have to be salesy or promote, overly pushy, but they could just be triggered from a functionality inside a feature or button, or the user's trying to do something. And when they do that, we educate them, and then we present them with the option to upgrade. So that's kind of how you want to look at it from the customer journey point of view. The next thing is to upgrade. It is to the moment for upgrades. So when do you do that? One of the things you can think about is letting the user explore and find their own way and discover. And another thing that we often do inside the product is interrupt a user journey with the offer to upgrade. So back to this worksheet. One of the examples of an upgrade moment is, say when the user would be creating their web summit, they're adding speakers, and the moment they hit their speaker limit, but they try to add another one, then we interrupt them and we offer them the upgrade. Or they want to they want to have their speakers share recorded presentations. When they try to do it, we educate them. Okay, you're going to need to upgrade plan to enable recordings, and then we take them through that flow. So there's so many possibilities, so many potential ways to do this. And I like to give a lot of examples because it shows how many opportunities there are in just your everyday kind of simple SaaS products to do this. So back to text in church, this example is, I mentioned that you could use cell phone numbers. You could have cell numbers in this CRM. So one of the things that we can charge for is the number of messages that you receive. And one of the ways that Text in Church decided to do this is that on a free plan, you can receive, you can send SMS messages out, so as kind of SMS marketing, but the free accounts are not able to receive replies. So one of the upgrades is to be able to receive replies and have two-way SMS communication. So that was a feature that users really wanted, and it was a great way to unlock an upgrade or an add-on. Yeah, the same thing for the Theory Test Pro, the driving theory app. It was inviting students. You hit your limit, you invite more students, and that's when we present with the upgrade. Alphalets is another company we worked with, and this is a SaaS for landlords to manage their rental portfolio. And if they had one property, they could list their property on here, and they have tenants living in that property and they're paying rent, and everything they need to manage is within this app. But if they wanted to add a new property, there's a cost for that. They'd have to upgrade, or they could pay per property on the app. So they'd have a monthly fee for their subscription, and then they could add extra properties. So that was another moment at which you do it. So what we like to do is we like to present the moment at which it matches the user journey and when they're trying to do something. That's when it makes the most sense. So collaboration sharing, this is the great way to think about adding new seats. So there has to be an incentive on your customer side to add a new seat. We want them to do this to increase their accounts and to get more of their team, of their colleagues using your product. So the ways to think about this are, we have to understand who the profiles are on their team. How do they work with their users? What do they do? Do they, how would they collaborate and share things? And then also, how do the profiles relate to different plans? So some of the offers that we could think about for account expansion for adding new seats is, if we're just thinking of it in terms of the Web Summits software, a summit host, somebody who's creating a web summit, has many different profiles that they're going to interact with. They have speakers, sponsors, attendees. So there's already 4 if you include the hosts, because they may have other hosts. A big summit may have 4 or 5 hosts. So they actually need to interact with all of these people, and it's going to happen on the software. So there's going to be invitations for speakers to come on and set up their profiles, things like that. Now, the way that we want to promote for them adding new seats is for the collaboration. So encourage them. Hey, do you want to invite new additional hosts or organizers to the platform? There's a flow for adding sponsors, and then there's lots of functionality for inviting attendees. So if you want to think about your product from the perspective of who are the profiles, how do they collaborate, and then how can you facilitate that flow to encouraging them to invite, share, and collaborate with the other profiles that they need to on your platform. So this UI, some of these might be quite small to see, but this is an example of attendees and how you can add attendees to the Web Summit. And that can be something that has a limit on how many attendees you can invite. And then there are also other moments that are really great moments to use psychologically to encourage a user to take an action. So this is one we like to use a lot in product design for software, is that when the user gets to the end of a task, we like to congratulate or celebrate that task with them, because there's friction in completing tasks within a product. So then we've got this kind of celebration, there's a rewarding feeling on completing a task. So we want them to feel that reward or dopamine or whatever that good feeling on completing something. And then we use that good feeling to push for the next thing. So, okay, your summit is live. Now you can go and share it and publish it. Here's our link to the summit, and we encourage them to go and invite attendees, or, you know, upload a CSV of contacts that they can then present and notify about this. So all of that is just getting them to make more use of the product. And it doesn't always have to be related to revenue. A lot of this is just actually increasing utilization, you know, delivering value and increasing utilization in your product, which is something you want to do. I've included a couple of examples of, you know, world famous products like Notion, how you can invite, and how invite is quite a prominent feature. And the reason it's prominent is because they want more users, and then they also can also relate to payment plans. In fact, they do. I think they have that as part of the onboarding flow. There are other places you wouldn't expect sharing to happen typically, and one of them might be something like a complex integration. We designed a complicated integration flow where usually users would get stuck, so we would ask them to invite a developer, and then we onboard the developer. And now the developer is also, you know, becomes another user on this platform. So this one's more about exposure than it is about expansion revenue, but it really helps. Miro and many other products that we use day to day have got really fantastic and detailed sharing interactions. You can invite people by email, you can set permissions and settings, you can share links, you can control who sees what and how. And that's a great way to give the user control and also manage their plans. Miro, I sometimes find even it can be a little bit cheeky the way that they do this, is that you can quite often invite people and without realizing that your cost of your plan is going up. So they remove the friction of it, even to the point where sometimes, you know, you only notice when you receive the billing, the monthly bill, and the fact that it's gone up. Now, I wouldn't encourage that. And what I've seen that Miro have done over time is when you're inviting editors, the next message on this kind of modal interface will be a notification saying you're inviting 3 editors. They'll have a 14-day free trial, and after that trial, there will be you know your account will be charged something $20 per user per month. So it's a really great way to do this with, you know, removing all the friction but still notifying them of the pricing increase. Slack has a very similar process for this. You know, the permissions and the way you share. These are good practice, and the reason I highlight this so much is because we see them in the big products, you know, the Silicon Valley products and the famous SaaS products. But when you get down to the bootstrapped startups and your day-to-day, you know, founders, early stage SaaS, we rarely see good implementations of this kind of flow or interaction, when really they're quite important and pivotal. They can make quite a big impact. So your expansion moments are tasks where the user might need assistance, or we need to explain and highlight key steps for them. So back to our Web Summit example of the Web Summit SaaS. The user might need help when they create a new account, or they're adding speakers. The expansion moment will be to invite, you know, when you are giving them a flow to invite new speakers. If they're adding new sponsors, the moment to present them with an upgrade offer is if they want to add different tiers. You know, like sometimes sponsors for events have your silver, platinum, gold sponsorship level, and that might be a paid a premium feature. So when they're trying to create their sponsorship program, that would be the moment to, you know, present that. So it's all about doing it contextually within the flow. within the user journey of what the user is doing at the time. Some other, we do it, that's the thing, we do it kind of contextually in their product experience, but we also just make it accessible within the product UI, within the navigation, so they can find it at any time. Sometimes they might want to go into CRM and just go to users and add a couple of users. And that's quite a simple thing, but again, that's something that's often not easy or not intuitive in a lot of kind of early to mid stage SaaS. Yeah, this is another good example of your controlling your users. This is your screen where you get to see them all and you control the settings. And it's nice to enable users to see this kind of view, control who's free and who's a guest, who's a member, and what, a summary. This is another good example of a team page. These are essentially you paid users, so you can control them, see who they are, remove, change the permissions. These are just really nice screens to have in your product, which often don't get the attention that they deserve. Yeah, now landlord property software, there's also an opportunity to do that with tenants. You manage, who are the how many tenants you have, who they are, and you get charged for that. Okay, so that's a summary. I know I've rattled through a lot of that quite quickly, and there's a lot of examples of interactions and ways to promote revenue to existing customers there. But I wondered if anybody had any questions or experiences or challenges around this that you'd like to share. But if you do, please feel free to comment in the group or come on the microphone. But otherwise,
Peter, I'm just gonna give you a plug now, because I don't know if everybody on here is one of your customers, but I saw a few of these in your previous session, and sort of the empty states, but also spotted the upsell on this dashboard when you showed this last time. And David has just done us some really good designs for doing exactly this in our product. So
cool.
There you go. There's a little plug for you. We haven't implemented them yet, so I've no idea if they're going to work, but they look good.
Let's see. Can't wait to hear if they do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're the only client that we've worked with on this call. There's quite a few familiar faces, but yeah, really appreciate the plug for us. Yeah, we're kind of obsessed with designing SaaS. We're doing it all day, every day, and spending most of my time looking at Figma or reviewing Figma. So there is, oh yeah, John, I think John had a question here. How do you suggest increased pricing for seats? That's a good one. I think I think you do it in the same way that we were talking about before. From the perspective of what has improved in the product. So any new user that's added to the product, how are they benefiting more than the same users from 6 months ago? We've seen this quite a lot. We've done this quite a bit, is that sometimes we've worked with a software company where we've redesigned the entire interface, and it might have taken 6 months. And they've invested a lot of money to do that. And in obviously then developing it, not just the design, but the development, I would argue, could be more costly. So when you think about it from that perspective, the product has dramatically improved the user experience. So any new user coming into that product is going to get just a much better product than they would have before that exercise. So what we say, and I quite often use this as an ROI tactic, is to encourage, look, if you're gonna invest in your product like this, when we're finished and you have a much better product, let's see if you can increase your pricing and think about how this investment is going to contribute to ROI. It can help in a number of ways, lifetime value, reducing churn, improving just customer satisfaction. But direct one for revenue is obviously that you're able to increase pricing and recoup some of that revenue. So always think of it for the user's perspective, what's the added value that they're getting. And it's no different for seats because they're just new users being added, and they probably have more features or easier to use features. Do you think that touches your point, John? Is that the... Yeah, great. Martin asks, how do you suggest increased pricing for flat prices? We have one product which can be paid monthly or annually. When you say flat pricing, Martin, is that every user pays the same thing like Slack, where it's like $8 a month? Yeah, same price for all users. So I'm surprised people are still joining the call. Yeah. Again, I think it's the same principle that applies. And if you watch the big companies do it, like Slack, I've seen over time they've increased their pricing. Even products that we're subscribed to, software that our team subscribes to, I've seen the pricing increases, how they happen and when, and I'd say it's exactly the same. I'd say it's exactly the same. The point that John mentioned earlier would be a good opportunity. You know, you're doing monthly and annual payments, so you could soften the blow by offering them the annual contract to maintain their price for one more year or the remainder of a year. But I think it's the same. It's about thinking about how you're delivering more value as your product upgraded. Has the value upgraded? In which case, you know, an across the board price increase. I think it's easier. I think it's much easier if you have flat pricing, and you can do it incrementally. It doesn't have to be one big price increase. Good. Okay. I think we've reached an hour. Unless there's any more questions, I think we can.
I have one more.
Yes.
So our product is basically QA test, automating for QA testing. And the thing about us is we charge per test run to be exact. And so the question is, we used to have kind of like a slider where you can go, you know, the more you add the more tests you add, the more price that you will be charged. And again, there's other add-on feature. If you add them, you'll be charged more. But the thing is, we have seen is when people do that, they will keep playing with the price, but never actually book a demo or try to purchase. So what we did is we actually changed all our pricing. Instead of putting a price, we just let them contact us. And we kind of have seen increase in booking the demo and pitching the product to them. But again, the purchasing is still not happening that much. So do you think it's a problem with the pricing, or is it the problem with the sales team not being able to actually pitch it well? Or, I mean, just out of this thought, do you think we should go with the pricing that should be like standardized pricing, or the ability to change the pricing, or just putting contact us? Like, which one do you think could be the best?
So Ahmed, these are for QA purposes, companies are running tests, right? And you're charging once per test, and the thing that they're not paying for is to use more tests. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Yeah, basically.
So do you ever get feedback from the users who have purchased one? Have you ever done a campaign to speak with them and understand their experience, and find out if they were repeatedly buying?
We did with the one that who purchased, and we did with the one that didn't purchase. The one who purchased, they said, well, we first run, because most of them first run it on a low test number and then increase it by time. For example, one company started with 1,000 tests per month, and they increased it down to 5,000 per month. And they keep increasing it. But I guess most of them didn't know how many tests they need. And sometimes they didn't want to use automation. They wanted to do a coding itself. So that's part of losing a customer. And there are always some bigger company, even if their tool is not that good.
Yeah. It does sound like a difficult one. I think like the most learning you can do about your customers, it sounds like you're already on the road to doing it, but it's understanding also how they're thinking about it, because what we're often doing in software, I think is probably the best answer I can give here, is like what we're doing in software is we're taking manual workflows and we're automating them and providing a flow within our product. And that's from the beginning of SaaS, that's always what it's been. It's getting more and more advanced now, but it still kind of comes down to that simple thing. So the exercise of understanding how your customers thinks about how many tests they need, how they quantify it in their mind, and how they think about paying for that. If you can get insight into that process of thought that they have, you might be able to design a flow that facilitates that mirrors that, but for your payment process. So you mentioned you have the slider, but maybe they're not, if they don't know how many tests they need per month, the sliders maybe not going to be that useful. So by understanding how they think about it, it might be there's a different mechanism that resonates better with their approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it makes, maybe just breaking it down into, if you are this kind of team, take this kind of team, take this. I don't know, maybe that's
yeah, it could be. It could be like if they're figuring something out, it could be a process where you're helping them figure that out, like it's step by step. Oh, how many projects do you have? How many tests do you usually run? And it could be even like step by step, and then they get to the end and you present them with what they need and ask them to sign up, which feels more like they're going on this discovering journey rather than a slider. But I'm not suggesting that's a solution, but I think the key thing is to understand how they think about the process more in order to provide an upgrade process that resonates for them. I think it's quite hard. It's just it's a process that takes time and a bit of understanding and maybe a few iterations.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ahmed. I hope that helps to some degree. Okay, thanks everybody ever so much for joining. Really appreciate all of your time and for being with us. SC, thanks. Very good presentation, Peter. Thanks so much, SC. Really appreciate your comments there. So, hey, we're going to follow up with a recording on this session, and you'll get access to the presentation. Also, if you want to book a call, feel free to go to useractive.io and you can book a call there. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again on another one.